This is Mark Tronson for the Australian Missionary News. I've got here with me today the Reverend Dr. Rowland Croucher, perhaps just Australia's leading theologian, thinker and pastoral reflector, just John Mark Ministries, perhaps with the largest Christian reflection website in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, Rowland, I've consulted you many times. What would you say would be the major pastoral issue today?
Main issue for pastors, and I talk to pastors every week, is unresolved family of origin stuff. If they came from a dysfunctional family, if there were difficulties in relating to the big people in their life, the powerful people, when they were a child, they take that into their adult life, into their marriage, into their work, and you cannot live the rest of your life as if those things didn't happen. So when there's conflict in a church and we unpack it, we find often that pastors come face to face with people who somehow represent the parents who related to them dysfunctionally. That's a common, very common issue.
Okay, now what about just the major theological issue?
That varies from church to church, denomination to denomination, and it varies from Western to third world countries. But the one issue that encompasses all denominations and all countries is the issue of homosexuality today. That is easily the number one. We're in a paradigm shift right now, like we were with slavery, like we were with the Ministry of Women, like we were with charismatic renewal. In 20 years' time, we'll look back on the homosexual issues, plural, there are many of them, and wonder what all the fuss was about. But we're in the middle of it at the moment, and we're not seeing the issues very clearly, unfortunately.
Okay. Now, just the Christian church, I know that's a very broad term, but what would you say is the major church issue today?
The major church issue in the West and in mainline churches is losing customers. People are not going to church. In fact, in 2003, the George Barna Research Group told us that more committed Christians were not in church most Sundays than were in church most Sundays. That's the first time in history that has ever happened. Big question, why are Christians forsaking church?
Okay. Let me give you just a side issue, and this might be to do with just the church growth thing, but we don't seem to see that in the Pentecostal scene. Can you discuss that?
Some Pentecostal denominations are growing faster than others, so it's not uniform. The Pentecostals are, in their worship, replicating Generation X, Generation Y music, and those young adults are attracted to that. Pentecostals expect a high degree of personal and spiritual commitment, and people are attracted to that. But there's a lot of moving between Pentecostal churches, in Pentecostal churches and out of Pentecostal churches. The net result is that they are growing, and probably for those cultural factors and those commitment factors mainly.
And so what about the church growth thing just across all the church?
All churches, except for most Pentecostal denominations, are declining. The churches that are declining fastest are those that are roughly doing what they've always done, and their worship services are the same, roughly, as their grandparents' days. All those churches in the West are declining. And one of the key reasons for this, and Tony Campolo has a chapter on it and I have an article on it, is television. People are watching television for 20 hours a week. When they come to church, it's frankly quite boring. Compared with television.
Yes, yes.
And the pastors are competing with telegenic personalities, yes, and they're not winning. Pastors who can preach with the charisma of people on television are going to attract an audience if what they say is worth listening to and so on. But in terms of their style,
Perhaps we should have some bright advertising every 10 minutes.
No, we don't need that kind of junk. We just need people to be able to communicate,
Yes.
who are worth listening to, and who are interesting, and who are answering questions that people are actually asking.
All right.
That's another factor.
Now, what's the future, Well?
The future, if we don't change, the future doesn't look good for Christianity in the West. We are sliding further behind. All the research by Christian Research Association and other groups are telling us that fewer people each decade are attending churches. One of the key factors that we haven't mentioned is pastors seeing their main role as equipping people for ministry rather than doing it themselves. We pastors are not very good at that, and people are going to be disappointed if their gifts and their potential and their ministry is not actualised in the church. So we pastors have to learn that ministry is for empowerment of others, not just simply accruing power to ourselves.
Okay. Well, Rowland Croucher, it's always inspiring and challenging talking to you.
Well, good to meet you again, Mark.
Well, this is Mark Tronson signing off for the Australian Missionary News.